Do not use stop and go surveys. In today's training video, we're going to talk about why you should not use stop and go surveys in Ekahau. There's reasons for it, and I'm going to show you the answers. Now, of course, like all rules, if you know what you're doing and you have a legitimate reason for using stop and go, then go ahead. But just realize the cost in data collection and inaccuracy. Let's just jump right into Ekahau. And first what we're going to see is a not stop and go. This was a continuous mode survey. We're going to look at the data and see what's collected. And then afterwards, we're going to come back and do the same site, but with a stop and go, and then compare the data collected between the two. We're now in a survey on an elementary school that was conducted using a MacBook on a Segway. So you're kind of going as fast as you can go on a Segway inside of a school. And let's go and look detailed into what the data collected tells us. We're looking for a couple things. How far apart are the data collection saving points? Where are they? What their distance is? Because we know at some point, Ekahau is going to have to take the data that was collected and interpolate in between the data points. That's how it makes the heat maps we'll be looking at. So let's zoom in here really close and see what's going on. I'm going to zoom in on the screen. And we can see if we turn on Survey tab and then Survey Inspector tab. I'm going to hide this for a minute down below and just zoom in nice and close. And we can see there's a green dot. The green dot is where we clicked. That's the human clicked and said, here's where I'm turning. Now remember the rules for continuous mode surveys. Click where you stop, click when you start, click when you turn. Yeah, and walk in straight lines. So every time you're going to stop, start, or turn, you're going to drop a data collection point. You're telling the software, I am here, and then the software is going to calculate all the other data points along the way in between the ones you do. So if you walk at a constant rate and you click every time you turn and you walk in straight lines, the software is going to line them out right where they are. So let's go and come in here and look a little closer. There's one right here where I clicked, and then the other ones on here are when the software did its data collection on the Sidekick. There's two nicks, so each of them gets a slightly different color when they save. And let's see how far apart those are. So on average here, if I switch over to the ruler tab, I can say, well, I had one here and one here. Let me click and drag it up. And old mine eyes, put glasses on. That's about 4 meters between this one and that one. It's about 4.5 meters over here. 3.5 over here, 3.4. Let's take a couple over on this side. Here's a really long one that got all the way out to 7 meters. Some in the middle are really close, some over here about 3 meters apart. So even though we're allowing the software to drop those data points, we're collecting the data fast enough, and this, by the way, is collecting on all channels. If we wanted these to be closer together, we would collect only on the channels that we care about in this building. That would make it go a little faster, which would mean they'd be a little closer. So now let's look at the data that was actually collected. We know these are collected close together, 3 to 4 meters. Maybe on a worst case, we've got about 7, but even over here where we had a 7, there was one between here and here that only was a 2. So yeah, we have them, they're very close together. Now let's look with Survey Inspector and see what we got. At this data point right here, this individual data point, now I'm going to go and make the bottom look a little bigger so we can focus on, but realize each data point, it's going to turn blue up above, but since I only have a single screen to show you, I'm going to kind of minimize that to let you see what's collecting. Over on the left, we see we're collecting all the APs. We happen to be in 5 gigahertz. These are the 5 gigahertz APs that are being collected, and they're coming up and down. The horizontal axis is time. Every time we move and collect data, it's time driven. Below that is the 5 gigahertz spectrum. Now, one of these frequencies is going to look stronger than others, and that's an artifact of being in an active mode survey, because the NIC that was in the MacBook while we were surveying was associated to an access point and sending data. So the spectrum analyzer that was on the Sidekick that was fairly close would see that signal as being much stronger because they weren't very far apart. So realize that This isn't interference, it's an artifact of the active survey. And then at the very bottom, down here, we can see the active survey and the ping times that were being collected during that active survey. The top bar is going to say the MAC address of the AP we're associated to. The bottom green bars are showing the ping times. The upper part is showing RSSI from each of the individual APs we're collecting. And then on the right side, in the center, is the spectrum analyzer view. And currently I have it set to not show, no, actually it is showing a real-time sweep, so let me turn that off. We don't need to see the sweep. If we happen to hit an interferer, we'll pop it up on the screen. I'm looking at the max density color. That's how it's currently configured, as well as showing the APs. The AP information coming from over here comes from the Wi-Fi NICs inside the Sidekick. The spectrum analyzer is showing the parts inside. So the little box comes from Wi-Fi. The colors underneath come from SpecAn. And now let's walk through. As I'm walking, and because I did a continuous mode survey, I can just go step, 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 and walk through the entire day. If it took an hour to walk, I can replay the entire hour. And you see as I'm replaying the hour, stepping forward, there was an AP that was strong. That was the one I was associated to, showing up here in the spectrum analyzer. A couple other ones show up because they're close and they have traffic on them. I can see all of the signals coming up and down. And as you'd think, as you're walking, one AP is going to climb. As you're getting closer to it, as you go away from it, it's going to lower. Another one's going to climb. And we can see that in this little section up over here. That's what happens when you have a continuous mode survey. We're collecting all the data. You can see over in the RTFM section, the MAC address, all the information from all the APs. If you hover, you can also even see some more detailed information that we decoded from beacons. So this is continuous mode survey. It was done on a Segway, fairly fast, actually really fast. And still our data points are 3-4 meters apart. Now let's go over and switch surveys. And this time we're going to look at what we capture walking in the same area, in the same place, but this time we'll be using a stop and go survey instead. We're back, and now we have the stop and go survey data. Same school, same equipment, same Sidekick. The only difference is what we're going to be doing is collecting the data in a different manner. A lot of people like stop and go survey because it feels like you're in control. You go someplace, you stop, you click the button, you wait 5 seconds, it collects all the data from all the channels twice, and then it stops, and then you move on and you do it again. That's true, it does that. And it also fixes a problem that we have seen in the past. If you have a very slow, say you're only having one data collection, and we click in one place, and then you walk, click. All the data saved between those two gets saved at the next point. So there is kind of a shifting of the actual data you collected over to the next data point. Now, if those are only 2, 3, 4 meters apart, I can live with that little shift more than I can live with the lack of data. I hate losing data, being on site, collecting data, and then throwing away. And that's what stop and go surveys do. They collect data only when you're standing still. All of that data you collect, I mean, it's coming into the Sidekick. The NICs are listening. They hear all the beacons. They're pulling all the data in, and then stop and go says, yeah, throw it away. Let's look and see what happens. So here we can see, I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Let's zoom in really close. And we don't see the lines in between where we were walking. We obviously walked in between those locations, but we didn't save where it was. One benefit, it doesn't look like you walked through walls. Well, if you click properly in a continuous, you can't walk through walls because we know it's humanly impossible. So your continuous mode survey shouldn't ever look like you walked through a wall if you click correctly. Here's a little data point right here. Stood at the corner of that intersection, collecting collected data. Let's go and look at what that collected data looks like. We can go to that same little spot and click. Now, just like before, I'm going to extend the bottom so we have a little more detail. But you understand, as we're stepping through point to point to point, we'll now be jumping from each of those locations. I want to be in 5 gig and I'm in the survey mode data, and here we go. And I can walk back and forth in time just like we did before. Oh, but look at right there. I'm collecting data for the 5 seconds. But what happened in between? I said we threw it all away. And yes, Ekahau did throw all the RSSI data away. But guess what? The spectrum analyzer kept running the entire time. The active survey kept running the entire time. So we did collect that set of data. What we threw away was the data that was happening in between. Another downside of stop and go survey is you go stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, right click save. That saved one group of stop and goes together. They're not tied contiguously back together like we do in a continuous mode survey. I could right click and save and save and save and save through a building and then come back with Survey Inspector and see the whole continuous mode working together. I can easily save that way. Here it's in little groups, so I can walk and say, oh, over this period of time, oh, there, I saw some, oh, yeah, then they went away. Well, you can see in the spectrum analyzer, they didn't go away. You can see right here, it's there. Over in the RTFM, the real-time frequency monitor, we could see the data was coming in from the device, the active surveys running. We just threw all this data away so that we could stop right here and collect better data. Pretty obvious what's going on. We're collecting the data and then throwing it away. Let's take another look. Let's go back up here for a second. And let's find another data point. And there's another set of information here. You can see as I go along. Here there is a long stretch over here as you look. There's a long stretch where there was no stop and goes. But obviously I collected data. In fact, if you zoom in way down here, you can see you even roamed, and the roaming took place during the walk in between the stop and go data. That might have been useful information to have. Yeah. So let's get rid of this for a second and come back and say, here's our big stop and go survey. It took a lot longer to do all the stop and goes because you have to stop, wait, 5 seconds, move, stop, compared to a continuous where you can collect more data faster, closer together. Let's see how far apart these are. Using the same method I used before, from here to here. That's 7 meters from here to here, 6.2 from here to here, 10 meters from here to here, 8 meters from here to here, 9 meters, 6, 4, 4. On average, we're collecting way less data points and throwing the data away that's in between, and it took longer. Spectrum Analyzer collected all the spectrum data all the way through. Active survey, including roams, was collected all the way through. Stop and go survey, though, you felt like you were in control because you didn't want to walk and click properly and follow the rules. Click when you start, click when you stop, click when you turn. And you ended up with less data. If you have a legitimate need for stop and go ahead and use it. What's not a legitimate need is, well, I don't want to click as I go into a room because I have to go. Yeah, just click when you stop, click when you start, click when you turn, and you can keep all the data being collected as you're going along. Thanks for listening. We have a lot more training modules, videos, podcasts, videos from all the WLPs out on wirelesslandprofessionals.com or WLANpros.com. Thanks for being part of the community.